Hey you guys, it's me SpongeBob #1 fan 2003 here, and as you can see I'm here with a super duper cool SpongeBob Cine-Manga book, and I actually just got this book as a Valentine's Day gift this year, and this is actually a very super cool Cine-Manga book, and I really love it. Okay, so as you can see on the front cover there's adorable little spongy Bobby, and Plankton is on top of his little head there, and there's this big huge green swirl in the background, and that's actually very super cool, and obviously this is a Cine-Manga book. Okay, and then here's the spine really quickly, and here's the back. Basically just like any other SpongeBob Cine-Manga book, there's SpongeBob right there, and of course the description. Okay, so let's go ahead and start looking at the pages that are in this Cine-Manga book. Okay, so there's this really nice red, orange, and yellow background. I really like that. It's like a sunset. You can see SpongeBob saves the day, and then there's a really brave, handsome looking pic of Spongy. And this one was actually made in the year 2005, as you can see right there. This one was made in 2005. And then there's like a really cool wood background, and then there's SpongeBob again. And then here are the SpongeBob characters that are obviously going to be featured in this book. Like, SpongeBob and all his friends, and including his, boarding school teacher and some others. Okay, and then here are the contents right here. And the first story is Ripped Pants. Oh boy, I really like the Ripped Pants story. Honestly, it's really funny. So SpongeBob and Sandy are at Goo Lagoon together, and SpongeBob decides to entertain Sandy by, making some really funny things with sand. And he pretends to be Sandy, then he delivers pizza made out of sand, and then Larry comes and asks Sandy and SpongeBob if they want to come lift some weights with him. And Sandy actually does a very great job with lifting weights. And SpongeBob, not so much. So, SpongeBob goes to a guy roasting marshmallows at the beach, and he grabs a few marshmallows. And he tries to lift up the marshmallows on the stick, and then he accidentally rips his pants open. And, everyone thinks it's so funny. And then everyone plays volleyball, and SpongeBob, accidentally rips his pants again. Oh, man. And then SpongeBob and his friends are throwing a frisbee, and then SpongeBob gets hit in the head, and then he makes yet another pun about his ripped pants. And now it's a surfing competition, and apparently SpongeBob takes it too far, and he pretends that he dies, and he says that he needs a tailor because he ripped his pants, and no one thinks it's funny. I mean, I wouldn't even think that was funny if my boyfriend ever did that prank. And then SpongeBob is in a little tent, and he has his little notepad right here. And SpongeBob thinks about another pun to do. And then he rips his entire pants off of his little body there. And no one is even paying any attention to him because of that stupid, really bad prank he did. And then a woman comes up to him, and she has a really bad sunburn, and she forgot to put on sunscreen. And then a guy comes over because he got some sand in his little hamburger buns there. And then a whale was buried in the sand and forgotten about. And SpongeBob explains that he lost his best friend. And then he sings a song about it. The really infamous Ripped Pants song. And then his friend Sandy forgives him, and SpongeBob signs Larry's pants, and then his underwear actually rips right off, and it's so funny. And then the next story is called Plankton, aka the debut of the little evil Plankton. So SpongeBob is making some Krabby Patties, and then they see Plankton for the first time, and Mr. Krabs explains Plankton has been trying to steal the secret formula for years, and this is also the debut of SpongeBob's laugh, his very first laugh. And SpongeBob is walking home that night, and Plankton lures him to come towards him, and then SpongeBob accidentally steps on Plankton because Plankton's so tiny. And Plankton explains to SpongeBob that he wants to have the secret Krabby Patty formula, or whatever, and he even gives SpongeBob a gold spatula. And then Plankton decides to get into SpongeBob's brain. And then he wakes up SpongeBob, and SpongeBob crashes through his house. And he crashes into Squidward's house. Oh, dang. Shut your mouth, you mediocre clarinet player. And then, they go into the Krusty Krab, and they get a Krabby Patty, and then SpongeBob takes it back to the chum bucket, and he almost drops it into the thing. And this is the first time SpongeBob cries. Oh my gosh, oh. And, Plankton goes nuts because SpongeBob explains the delicious Krabby Patty ingredients. And then Plankton is now stuck in the computer. And SpongeBob leaves with his sandwich and takes it back to the Krusty Krab. And then Hall Monitor. So, Mrs. Puff is about ready to announce the Hall Monitor of the day. And SpongeBob really wants it to be him. As you can see, he scooches his chair very close to Mrs. Puff's desk. And she tries to pick someone else because she wants to avoid SpongeBob because she knows what SpongeBob's going to do. And she decides to pick SpongeBob because, yeah. And SpongeBob says an extremely long speech. And now SpongeBob is officially Hall Monitor, and he tries to be like a signal box, but apparently he causes a bunch of car accidents. And then he sees an open window, and then he decides to be the open window maniac just to teach the couple a lesson. Oh, and then Patrick's ice cream, and all that. And then SpongeBob decides that Patrick could be a part of his little crew, or whatever. So SpongeBob and Patrick have walkie-talkies, and they do bunches of stuff. And, you know, Patrick sees two police officers, and they show him a wanted maniac poster. And he's like screaming, and then he picks up a poster without screaming again. And then he realizes that he sees the maniac, which is of course really SpongeBob. And SpongeBob is like screaming and crying around the town. And then he goes into a mailbox. And then Patrick says that the maniac's in the mailbox. And SpongeBob like runs screaming bloody murder. And then he falls down. And he sees a poster, and he realizes that he was the maniac the entire time. And then Mrs. Puff disciplines SpongeBob by saying, "SpongeBob, I can't believe you destroyed half the city." And then SpongeBob looks very, very hurt and upset about what happened. And Mrs. Puff confesses that she was the one who gave SpongeBob the uniform, and the police arrest Mrs. Puff. And in school, she says, "I'd like to see you after class, SpongeBob, 6 months from now." In a very, very rude, harsh tone. And then the final story is Crusty Love. So Mr. Krabs develops a crush on Mrs. Puff. And luckily she is single. So Mr. Krabs, well, you know, SpongeBob makes Mr. Krabs introduce himself to Mrs. Puff. And he's so nervous because Mrs. Puff is apparently very beautiful to him. And, you know, all that stuff about crushes and, you know, relationships. And SpongeBob tells Mrs. Puff that Mr. Krabs wants to go on a date with her. And then they organize a date, and they go to a fancy restaurant, and Mr. Krabs, of course, doesn't want to spend any money, because you know how Mr. Krabs is, he's very cheap. Just $100? Wow, okay. Okay. And then they organize another date, and Mr. Krabs goes to Mrs. Puff's home. And Mr. Krabs decides to spoil Mrs. Puff with a bunch of gifts. And, even though he doesn't even want to spend any money, he's like, he begs SpongeBob to buy something, then he yells at him for buying something. As you can see, at first he's like, Mrs. Puff needs a new pair of shoes, and then SpongeBob gets them, and then he says, "You're breaking me, boy." And then SpongeBob eventually can't take it anymore, because he's tired of getting yelled at, even though he's trying to do everything that Mr. Krabs tells him to do. And Mr. Krabs breaks down into tears, and then he realizes that maybe Mrs. Puff needs a dryer to go along with that, washer machine thing. And then SpongeBob cusses out at Mr. Krabs, and he goes home. And Mr. Krabs looks so surprised. And then Mrs. Puff realizes that she doesn't need all these gifts, but she says that Mr. Krabs is a very sweet man. And she gives him a kiss, and Mr. Krabs is like, "Oh," and his eye stalks form a little heart. That is so cute. I totally ship this couple. Mr. Krabs x Mrs. Puff. How cute. And that is actually all for this story. And then here's an advertisement for some other Cine-Mangas right here. And then another SpongeBob Cine-Manga story right here. And then an advertisement for the movie Cine-Manga book. And then an advertisement for Fairly Odd Parents and Jimmy Neutron, of course. You've seen these before. And then like anime or something. Alright, so that's actually pretty much all for SpongeBob Saves the Day. I actually really super enjoyed this Cine-Manga book. My favorite part about Ripped Pants was probably, you know, when SpongeBob kept on ripping his pants, but my least favorite part was when, you know, he pulled that really, really bad prank, you know. I'd be very, very mad if someone ever did that in real life. And then, oh yeah, I also really enjoyed the song as well. And in Plankton, I really enjoyed the fact that, you know, SpongeBob was, like, roasting Squidward or something. But I really like the part when, you know, SpongeBob realizes, like, you know, he, like, well, I mean, you know, SpongeBob goes home and Plankton's stuck on the computer. And in Home Monitor, I thought it was so funny, you know, the way SpongeBob was, like, pulling all those pranks. Or whatever, not pranks, but yeah. And I really enjoyed, you know, Mrs. Puff and Mr. Krabs' relationship. Again, I ship this couple big. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. So goodbye everybody, have a great day, and peace out.